Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. It is still in the description below. It is still your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Please reach out to me directly. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. Today we are discussing a watch that represents a colorful combination of lively tones in a familiar package with a useful complication. This is the Patek Philippe Nautilus Chronograph 5980/1AR-001. The original 5980 in steel came out in 2006. This model, with two tones and blue dial, arrived at the 2010 Basel World. So it's still 40.5 millimeters in diameter in rose gold and steel, 12.5 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip. If we're just talking about the case, it's 45.5 millimeters, and then from end link to end link, total distance across the wrist is 51.4 millimeters. So it's bigger than a 5711. I would say it is to a 5711, sort of what an offshore is to a Royal Oak. The difference is this is much easier to wear than not just an offshore, but even a 41 millimeter Royal Oak. As you can see on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, we've got quite a bit of clearance. The lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist, and you can even see from over the top, which exaggerates the width of a watch, that I've got plenty of clearance. It's fairly flat, but it has a dramatically sloped flank, so you should have no trouble getting a dress cuff to ramp up and over the side of this watch. And I could recommend it for a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference. The bracelet is fully integrated since the first Nautilus of 1976, drawn by Gerald Genta. The timepiece has been a bracelet first and a watch second, because that is how Genta saw himself, as a jewelry designer first and a watch designer second. So he wanted something in the tradition of a bracelet that could be worn with a beautiful integrated all-of-a-piece aesthetic. It just happened to include a timepiece. So we've got this case that flows into lug, that flows into bracelet, all naturally with a progressive taper. You can even see that these pieces actually taper in thickness and profile as we move away from the lug. We've got this lovely transitional bevel on each lug flank, and it continues perfectly aligned down the edges of the links. You can also see that the case is quite complex, with the bezel and the wings all of a piece, sort of clamping down almost like a sandwich structure over the bezel gasket, helping to deliver the 120 meter water resistance, but also emphasizing the complexity of this case's assembly and its many different finished facets, helping to explain why this has always been the senior sports watch in the collection, both in terms of reputation and in price over the Aquanaut. The finish of the Aquanaut and the assembly of its case is not this complex. Now moving down, you can see that we have center links in rose gold, primary links in steel, and we have here removable links fixed by pins and sleeves. You need a block and a punch if you want to size these. The reason Patek changed over from screws, this is their version, is that they were afraid too many people were stripping out the screws trying to change these at home, and you cannot do that with pins and sleeves. And that's true, but I still probably would have rather seen screws. Now we have a double folding clasp here that has a ceramic spring-loaded pin snaps, so you can see those right there. Those are designed to ensure that over time, this little clamshell lock cannot wear down the pin snaps, and thus the tolerances cannot become ropey or worn. Now when it's all closed, you lock the clamshell. It's very secure. You have the Calatrava cross there. That is the symbol of the manufacturer. You'll also see it on the rotor on the case back. You will also see it on the crown, which is a screw down. Rolling back to the watch itself, the case and the case back and the bezel are the three primary components. And you can see how it's not just the distinction between polish and satin here, but thanks to the rose gold, we have a lovely color contrast. Taking a quick look, you can see that there is a little pusher on the flank, and again, full disclosure, pre-owned watch. There have been some divots made by the pusher tool right there, but you can see from even 6 inches away, they vanish. We have a system that was based on an annual calendar. So the reason we have a pusher for the calendar system is because this movement, the 28520, was also used for the 5960 annual calendar chronograph, which had day, date, and month. And of course, they were all adjusted with pushers. Well, necking down to just the chronograph and the date, we still have the one pusher because there's no conventional quickset for the date. So that's how that works. Patek did a great job of integrating the chronograph pushers into the flanks. The Nautilus's profile really doesn't change appreciably, so nothing is ruined. As with the Royal Oak, which preceded it by 4 years, we have a rounded polygonal bezel, and it includes both satin finish on the top and sloped polished planes in profile. Now there is a vertical satination, and I've always said the Nautilus has a little bit more of a thoroughly realized design in the Royal Oak, because the Royal Oak has that rounded octagonal bezel, but then the inner bezel, the crystal, and the dial are round, whereas here, outer bezel, inner bezel, crystal, and dial all have the same shape. Now the dial is a lovely metallic blue. It's not quite the dull slate blue that you see on many standard Nautilus models. This is a little bit more saturated and intense. We still have the conventional lateral striations that are common to most Nautilus models and have been since '76, with solid rose gold hands as well as indices, because they will not tarnish or oxidize over time. We've got our chronograph seconds, then we have the bullseye with coaxial chronograph minutes and chronograph hours, which keeps the dial very nicely organized and clean. Then you can see we have a flyback chronograph action, so reset and restart with one push of the reset trigger. There's no need to stop and then reset and then restart. This is great for timing events that occur in rapid succession. We'll do a quick lume shot. You can see the dial is quite well lumed, not so much at the bottom, but you'll be able to read the time precisely. We'll pop that clamshell out back. We'll take a look at the case back. And the case back is quite attractive. The movement's nicely sized. You can see this is the 28-520, 35 joules, automatic winding with unidirectional winding action and ceramic bearings. It has a 55-hour power reserve and a 4 Hz beat rate. You can see it's free sprung with a 6-position adjustment. This is a Patek Philippe Gyromax style free sprung architecture and an anti-magnetic Spiromax silicone hairspring. So Patek rates these as no worse than -3 + 2 seconds per 24 hours from the factory. Now the combination of ceramic bearings, or hybrid ceramic bearings, I should say, the balls are ceramic, the races are steel, and unidirectional winding, that is more efficient than bidirectional with steel balls, so that is why those features are used, and that's why I say they are notable for efficiency. They have been optimized and tested under laboratory and real-world conditions to prove as much. Now this is, of course, a column wheel vertical clutch chronograph. You can see the unconventional column wheel employed, but the column wheel action is very crisp, and the vertical clutch means that you can engage without any jump or stagger, so the hand always engages smoothly without gaining extraneous time. Another feature of the vertical clutch is you can leave the chronograph running full time with no additional wear, tear, or hazard to the movement. And because the watch doesn't have a lot going on when the chronograph's not running, some people like to have the seconds hand going full time, so you can do that with a vertical clutch system. Though it does not have hacking, you can use the flyback effectively as your 0 reset to synchronize to a reference time if you are using the chronograph seconds as your running time. Now you can see it's a nicely decorated movement. There's not much to say because all of the decoration here is self-evident. Stripes, satination, polished screws, mirrored bevels, engine turning on rotor as well as base plate. We have locating pegs for placing bridges on base plate, and those peg heads have been polished. Then you can see all the steel components of the chronograph have been beveled on their edges and satinated on their top, so lots to love. If you love this watch, reach out to me. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.